Hey folks, Studio here, gonna bring you a video talking about what I did for Cloud9 and why they did not win LCS. So, to give a quick little informative thing of what happened to Cloud9 at LCS, they did not qualify. They lost in group stages 1 to 2. They beat the Salad Bar, but they lost to Team Marn and Azure Gaming. So, this is what this is all based off of. If you don't care about this, well, sorry about that, but I did do stuff for Cloud9, and you can at least talk about the coaching stuff. Hopefully that will still be interesting. But what is coaching? What is a League of Legends coach? When you think about coaches for other sports, what do you think? You think, all right, a football coach is going to go ahead, help them set up their plays, watch their training, watch their scrims, make sure they are always trying to improve, and it's also a lot of people management. It's a lot of just making sure self-esteem is high. So what did I do for Cloud9? Well, I watched 90% of their scrims, could not watch some due to other obligations. For example, during TSM Invitational cast, I could not watch their scrims because I was casting. But I did get to watch some of their games while casting, which was a good two birds being killed with one stone. But what it comes down to is you watch their replays and then you make them strive to improve. So, or not the replays, but their games. So in the case of Cloud9, I watched most of their scrims. I would be listening on Skype, muted. I would have this process where I would talk. Once you start getting seriously into picks and bans, I'd shut up, not talk until the game was over, because I knew when it came to tournament time, I would not be there. And then once the game was over, if there were just general issues I could very quickly talk about, like, guys, buy your items faster. You have to buy items quickly, or else you're wasting a lot of time. The enemy team might be able to set up a really good level 1 fight because you spent 5 extra seconds scrolling through the shop. And this is an issue every North American team has. They all buy really slowly, but still. Cloud9, they actually had it exploited a couple times. So, watch their games, make sure they're buying faster. If there's a bigger issue, one that I can't just very quickly bring up, then I set it aside. I set it either for a team conversation after all the scrims are done. Let's say there's this big continuous problem, and if it's the team as a whole, I'll talk with everybody as a whole. If it was 1 or 2 people, in the case of some of the fights, for example, Wild Turtle used to go very, very YOLO as an AD carry. You ask any bot lane about how Wild Turtle plays, he plays super aggressively, takes a lot of risks, and he used to take even more when I started coaching, which was January 4th, I believe. So, he plays too aggressively, he plays too far forward, he gets punished a lot. What did I do? I had a conversation with both him and Lemonation. We covered that they really need to be playing more passively. They need to make sure that the bot lane is not always going to be this really risky gambit, where maybe they'll win, maybe they'll lose, but something will happen. It will never be just an even lane. And Wild Turtle, because I knew he was trying to adjust from playing a lot of solo queue, and he's still relatively new to the AD role in the competitive sense, I had to make sure that he would not die. I had to make sure that when he played well. So lots of one-on-ones with him, lots of Skype conversations, lots of chats, just make sure he had the right attitude, make sure he had the right mentality going into every game. Every now and then I would just send a message when the game started saying, hey, play passively. So that was what I did, I'd say, on a playstyle level. There's also the people management level. So this is something that I got to see at CLG, or with CLG at IPL 5. They'd just lost their match, they were out of the tournament, and they weren't arguing. And I was talking with one of the people, Garvey, who is a super awesome dude and does a lot for all the teams. That dude really cares about esports, so shout outs to Garvey. But I was having a conversation with him, and one of the things he pointed out was that CLG, they just lost their match, and they weren't arguing. And that was a problem they had before. Like, CLG Drama House is something people always used to bring up, but they weren't arguing with each other. They weren't yelling at each other. And that is something that I also had to do. I definitely didn't. I made sure that, you know, if people, like, if they josh each other, it was okay. But when insults got too personal, when conversations were just kind of looping around in circles, I tried to limit them back towards each other. Because a lot of teams do have that problem where it's just really hard to listen to someone else. Sorry if I'm every now and then I have to turn and cough because, well, I'm a little bit sick, so talking's a bit tricky. So, what did I do for them? People management, watch their scrims, all that jazz. It was really fun. I had a blast doing it. I'd do it again, but I have to pay bills and not starve. So, LCS. Game 1 against Team Marn, what happens? The game is fairly equal. Marn had, I'd say, a little bit more of a solid early game. Once it got towards the mid game, Cloud9 really picked up some matches and they did well. There's a base race though, or base race. So a base race is something that no one really knows all that much about. Like, you can have good ideas of what's going to happen. One team has Nunu, the other has Twisted Fate. Who wins that split, that base race? If Twisted Fate has Lich Bane, maybe he will. If the AD carry that Nunu's Blood Bowling has a lot of items, maybe the other team will. No one really knows. And that's where it gets really scary. A base race is a huge risk. If you leave too late, you might lose an inhibitor or lose the game. If you just try and stay too long, what if they go ahead? What if you lose your own base in response? Or what if they show up and can just kill you off? So the base race happened. What the order of events was, I believe Martin started pushing top, Cloud9 as a response pushed mid. Mid's a better lane to push because it's shorter. They also had Nunu. Cloud9 pushes, they take mid turret, they take mid inhibitor. They start going for the Nexus turrets because Martin was still pushing. However, Anivia went back, and when Anivia went back, she showed up, stalled out Cloud9 long enough so that they could not push, because pushing against Anivia at the 27-minute mark, when you're trying to kill both Nexus turrets, you take too much damage for the Nexus turrets. You will die because she will kill all the creeps. And also, she does a lot of damage herself. Marn's team, I'm just going to say it, they took a big risk by trying to go for the game finisher, but they played it perfectly. They played amazingly well. That is, like, holy crap. That was good decision making. I forgot who I talked to. I think it was Clicky D. I talked to him afterwards. It's like, who made the call to send Anivia back? And it's like, it was him and someone else. Like, that won them the game. That was the call that locked it in. And what could have happened was Cloud9 could have retreated, gone back after taking inhibitor, and they probably would have won the game, because the early inhibitor, they had a hard initiate comp, and if they could force Marn to come forward, they could win a team fight really easily if they get the good catch on them. So why did they take that big risk? Why take that big all in? And this is, I'd say, one of the two steps that really broke them down. Mentality. So afterwards, they went on tilt for sure. But beforehand, the mentality for Cloud9 was that they would win this match, they would get a gaming house, and they would play really well together, and they would just practice and be the best of Season 3. If you watch the video Riot put out, it was high hopes, and they really did have high hopes. They expected to win, and then afterward they expected to get even better and stronger. A lot of the conversation that happened where, where's the house going to be? Who will they have sub for Season 3? Stuff that doesn't relate to the game, but relates to the benefits of what they would reap from taking the game. So, the focus was on Season 3. The focus was just on the future. And the other part of the mentality was going to be they were favored to win the tournament. They were favored to qualify for Season 3. I realized that Cloud9, when they were Orbit or Quantic or Nom Nom, doesn't matter. They're never favored. They were, that good team. They were kind of in the same position as Fear, actually, where it's like, yeah, they're a pretty good team, but they're not as good as TSM or CLG or Dignitas. This was the case at Raleigh. This was the case kind of across the board. Every tournament, there'd be the big hype, like, I think CLG is going to take this, and Quantic or Nom Nom or Orbit would be there and just be like, well, we're pretty good too. Wow, Ezreal just got destroyed. Wow, Ezreal just survived. Oh, okay, good. So, when you're a person who normally doesn't have that, that big level of backup, when you first get it, it can be very startling. This isn't an excuse. This played into what happened. So if you tell someone who normally doesn't get that much enthusiasm about their actions, like, you're awesome, they're gonna do what they do. They're just gonna do it harder. In the case of Cloud9, it's like, all right, we're awesome. We're set for this. We're good. We're fine. We're not going to lose or anything. We'll survive. And it definitely affected them. It affected how they played. It affected how they thought about the matches that were coming up. It was a big deal that really kind of not necessarily shut them down, but they did not handle it well in the end. And I also played a part into that. I definitely knew that they were favored to win. I felt that they should win, despite some of their flaws, and I feel like I could have pushed them a lot harder. I could have definitely tried to make sure they weren't too cocky. I'd give a statement and be like, you guys are the best, but don't be too cocky. And I think that, along with all the other attention they were getting, definitely affected them. It's like if I'm saying you guys are the best, don't be too cocky, and everybody else is saying you guys are fine, all of a sudden, you know, that you guys are the best, don't be cocky, that don't be cocky kind of trails off. And that's my bad for that. So they were focused on the future. And when that push came to shove, when that moment came, that base race, they saw this as their chance. They saw it as, all right, we beat Marn. This is the harder match of the group that people assumed. Marn would be the strongest because Azure had the recent roster changes, and Salad Bar, I love them, but they just weren't considered to be that powerful. If they could win that match against Marn, they were most likely going to go against Brunch Club, and Brunch Club was not that strong. They definitely don't have the old blood, even though they are a really good team. Excuse me. So they're there, they're getting close, and they focus on that moment, they focus on the future, and it costs them. And this is something that you have to be worried of just in any situation. If you're trying to apply for a job, if you're trying to apply to a school, if you're trying to do anything, and you think of the future, you think of what you'll get out of it, but you lose your focus on the moment, and you let that kind of drive your action, you'll get nervous, you'll get freaked out, and it might affect you really dramatically. It might cost you your game. If you're focusing on getting into college and only getting into college, you might go ahead not do well enough in some of your classes, that could send you back. If you're focusing on getting a job, and it's like, man, if I get this job, I'll get like $100,000 a year. When that interview comes up, you might just be so focused on the future, you might just, try to appease someone too much and just not let it work out. At the same time, if you've been calm and collected, maybe you'll get that job. In the case of Cloud9, they got too focused on that one moment. We all got focused on the future, and when the realization came that the one moment mattered so much, the focus didn't become how do we handle this. The focus became win this and advance. The advance part, the future part, is what cost them. If Vi had her ult up, she totally she didn't have Ignite up. If I had her ult Ignite, she totally could have gotten a kill there. But that was just game one. Marlon is considered the strongest team of the group. Besides Cloud9, they ended up beating Azure, and they qualified. They became a really good team, despite only being a team for a few weeks. The other match with Azure, what happened? Well, this would be the other part. Mindset, I'd say, was part one. Part two is preparation. The preparation that went into the tournament was limited. I'd only been around for a week. I'd only been a coach for a week. That's not a lot of time to be a coach. The team had not practiced a whole lot in December, and the biggest tournament of their careers, the biggest tournament of their lives, and they weren't practicing till a week beforehand. The reason they didn't practice in December was that a lot of the teams they normally scrim, CLG, TSF, Dignitas, weren't necessarily around to scrim, and I think they just kind of felt confident. No one really knew how strong the North American teams were back then. This was before the qualifiers. This is where people thought that the only good team was really going to be Epic, and Marn hadn't really been promoted that well. So all of a sudden, they're not practicing, and they get into Game 3. And when I first started watching their games, they were not a good team. They were a team where bottom lane had like an 80% chance of losing. Lemon and Turtle were just on two different of wavelength. Nian would try and make up for that by doing really well, and the fact that bottom lane would do so poorly meant that the jungler could just camp mid lane every time Nian played aggressively, or top lane, which meant that all of a sudden all the lanes are at a disadvantage. The jungler for Cloud9 is trying to make up for the bot lane not doing well. It all goes to hell. And the Cloud9 that I saw a week later, they were a good team. They were a damn good team. As long as they didn't have a goof up at level 1, which they had a couple of, and that's why the level 1s were so passive, they did really well. But imagine if they'd had those extra couple weeks of practice. Imagine if they'd been playing all throughout December. When I say they weren't practicing, I mean that High, I believe it was High, Lemon, Yuzuki were only playing one or two games a day tops. Yen was playing quite consistently, and while Turtle would play some solo queue games, but he kind of developed some bad habits from it. So it wasn't really practice. It was playing to play. And because of that, when they came against Azure, they just weren't prepared. Their lineup kind of regressed a bit because of how tired and how, on tilt they were. But because they were so rusty, when they got worse, they got a whole lot worse, and they got to that level of just not being experienced. And had they had the extra 2 weeks of preparation, that could have been what they needed to beat Marn. That could have been what they needed to beat Azure. But they were not prepared for it in the end. We also were not prepared for the tournament. That was something that we did not do a good job making sure the team was ready for the 10 p.m. matches and ready for the format. The format is brutal. I don't like the format, actually, but that's neither here nor there. But you play up to 3 games. If you lose 2 games, you go home. If you win 2 games, you advance to the next stage. These are 2 games, not 2 sets, 2 games, and that's a lot of pressure for that limited amount of time. What made this trickier too is that the matches for Cloud9 were late at night, at about 10 p.m. So Turtle goes to bed normally at 12 p.m. Eastern. His matches started at 1 p.m. Eastern, so past his normal bedtime. So we had these late matches. We did not do a good enough job making sure that the players, even if they had to wake up early to be at Riot, we did not do a good enough job making sure they took naps. We did not do a good enough job making sure they were awake. We prepared, but we definitely didn't prepare set in stone. And when Azure's comp came out, we went for double AD, which hasn't worked in the past, but it's always a big risk, and the fact that it was so late at night, it meant that the players were just not playing at the right skill level. Cloud9 was playing not as Cloud9 that I saw Wednesday, just being amazing, doing well in scrims. Maybe not some of the CLG ones, but playing well overall. They'd become the Cloud9 that I'd seen a week before, where everything would just kind of go to hell. You'd see it happen, and it was a big train wreck. And that was a preparation thing. How we prepared, how we made sure that the players were in a good position, we could have done it. And I'm not going to blame Riot for that. I think Riot tried. I do think Riot tried to pack too much in there, but we definitely could have made sure that people took their naps. We definitely could have contacted Riot and said, yeah, we're just going to sleep until like 4 p.m. to make sure everybody is rested. So as a recap, what really happened in Cloud9 as a whole, some of the stuff we just did not prepare well for. Some of the stuff was just the mentality, being the favorite team. When you're never the favorite team, it can get to your head, it can get to your perception, and it can really affect what you do. So Cloud9, they played okay, but they were a great team, and they could have played great. It just did not happen that day, unfortunately. Go, Jace, go. If he gets his combo back up, he can kill Ezreal. Damn, he needed the QE combo back up. And I just kind of want to make this video to say that it happened and it was unfortunate. You should still root for them. They're still really cool guys. They made some mistakes that they're never gonna make again. We made some mistakes that we're never gonna make again too. I definitely did my own fair share. I could have been a better coach. No one's at fault though. My throat, by the way, is literally gone. I'm struggling to talk, so I'm gonna have to end this video right now. Adios for now, folks.